Thanks for tuning in once again to Prime Sports NASCAR. I'm Greg DePalma along with Eric Smith from racereviewonline.net. And as promised, we are going to talk today about, well, before we talk about the silly season, and that's, I know, on everybody's minds. It's like if you're an NFL fan and NFL free agency and you can't wait for it to begin, and the same thing in baseball. And I'm not so sure about the NBA anymore, but even hockey, it's Canada Day and all that other stuff. So that's basically what we're going to get into on our next show.
Yep.
But before we can get to that, it's important to put into context everything else that goes about of why these transactions are taking place, driver to driver, why some of these decisions are being made, so forth and so on. And that means we have to start, Eric, with the NASCAR Cup Series charter system. And that's what we're going to do on this report. We are going to go over the charter system and explain it as best we can. How long did it take you to understand it?
Gosh, probably a full season. When this first came out, it almost took me a whole year to figure out what's going on.
When did it come out?
Who's got what? Ooh, good question. I should know this all the time. 17, 18, somewhere around there.
Oh, so it's not even 5 years old.
It's not that old. No, it's not that old yet. It's fairly new. I should have looked into that so I know exactly when it came out, but it's fairly new. It took me like the whole season. It's like, well, what are these things again? And why are we kind of cutting the field down to kind of limit like what's going on and why is everything thrown into this charter? And what if you don't have one? And it literally took me pretty much a whole year. Then I finally got the grasp of it. Then it kind of has been an afterthought because let's be honest, the big teams have been the big teams lately. It hasn't been a lot of movement other than the smaller teams. But now what makes this relevant this year with why we got to have two separate shows is you've got driver movement. There's some driver. It's not going to be like in the years past. You're going to see like 20 drivers move around like, oh, this guy's a free agent and that guy's a free agent. You do have some big names. We'll talk about that in the next show. But a lot of where those big names go and what they do is now dependent on charters because we got new teams coming to the sport. And these new teams want to expand. Like Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan's team or Pitbull and Justin Marks or the Live Fast Racing with Matt Tifft and BJ McLeod. They've all got teams this year. They secured charters. Well, now you've got new teams even more wanting to come in. Those teams want to expand, but there's 36 charters and 36 only. They're like, think of it like the NFL. There's 32 NFL teams. And if somebody wants to come in, it's hard for the NFL to just say, hey, let's add a 33rd or 34th team. It changes a lot. Teams have budgets. NASCAR has budgets.
Oh, yeah. It takes years.
Yeah. That's why you see a lot of like an expansion team may take over another franchise. Like an NBA, Seattle Supersonics became the Oklahoma City Thunder. So that's where we're at in NASCAR now. It's like the end's full. There's 36. Their charters are, I believe, till 2024 as part of the agreement. They're going to be here till 2024.
Okay, and then they have to decide what works, what doesn't work, in a new agreement.
Do we bring it back?
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So right now they're through 2024. And I get a lot of people maybe wondering, well, why NASCAR? Why now? Why are these new teams wanting to come in? You got three this year. We already know two that are coming in next year. Those have already been announced. Colleague and GMS, and people may be wondering why. Why now? Why NASCAR? Why now? Well, the new car's coming out next year. So these cars that we're racing right now, once Phoenix, the checkered flag falls in November, these cars are gone. You cannot use these next year. So you've got to have a new car. So if you're ever going to come into the sport, why not come in when a new car is coming in? Because there's no disadvantage. It's not like the Hendrick's been massaging on this car for 7 years and they keep building new ones. Sure. And know the lay of the land. So that's why. But you can't just come in and now not have a charter because there's financial benefits.
Yes.
The 36 charters, they don't announce them anymore. I should say the purse anymore. There used to be, if you look at a box score from, let's just say 2013, 2014, it'll say you can look at a box score now and then you look at one from then, you're like, there's a column missing. It's the purse. And it used to say what each driver made that race, that car made. The winner made $343,000 and the second place was $200,000. Like it would say it. Now it's gone. The reason is because the 36 charter teams get paid they take all that money and put it in a piece of a pie. And the charter teams will make, so let's just say Kevin Harvick finishes second. 1 week, and he gets paid, let's just say 250,000. But let's say a non-chartered car instead finishes second. He may get 30,000. They get significantly less money. So it's crucial to have that charter for one, the financial aspect, two, for your own personal aspect, because you could sell sponsorships saying you could go to these big boardrooms. Hey, I got a car that's going to be on the track, guaranteed all 36 points paying races. It's not, hey, I have to qualify my way in. I only have 4 spots. So a sponsor is more liable to sign with you. And the other factor is with a charter is it's just the stability. It's you could eventually sell it if you don't need it and get money back. So there's a lot of you need the charter per se. So you don't want to come in without one. So that's where this whole thing sparks it is, as a prime example, Kurt Busch. He's a free agent. We'll talk about potential moves in the next show. But if he was to leave Ganassi, the rumor teams are Trackhouse and 2311 Racing. But right now, their one-car teams are filled.
Yeah, they don't have a charter for Kurt Busch.
Exactly. So if he was going to leave, why would you go to a team without a charter? Yeah. So see where this kind of.
By the way, are there any, or before the new car came in, let's just say a couple of years ago, was there an advantage to not having a charter?
No, just because the financial.
It's basically the only reason that you don't have a charter is you want it, you just can't afford it.
Exactly. Or there's teams that aren't getting rid, because if you get rid of it, you'd have to buy it back. And odds are, like right now, a charter is going to be going for a lot of money because these teams know you need it. And like Hendrick, why would they need the money? You can't spend the money they do and then like, hey, that car is not bringing the person. Hey, Chase Elliott's running great, but he doesn't have a charter.
Okay,
that car is going to significantly make less money. So these teams that got them, you don't want to just willingly give one up.
Okay.
So it's hard to get one.
All right. Let's tell you what, before we go down the line with everything, we'll start at basically at the top. Want to remind everybody, as you can see on the screen, you get a free 10-day subscription to RotoWire. That link you see there, and of course you can't just hit it like on a website. So you got to copy and paste the link to a browser, pops up, and you get a matter of fact, I think I even have it in here. Yeah, it's right here. This is what pops up. Free 10-day RotoWire subscription. So you get the access to every sport, not just NASCAR. You get everything that RotoWire has. You don't have to give them a credit card. All right. And you get all sorts of content too. Not just the tools that you use for fantasy, but content, really cool content. So that's what you get. That's that's the first page you'll see. And then you scroll down, you fill in your favorite team, sport, all that. It's very easy. It'll take you like less than 2 minutes to fill it out. Boom. You're already on surfing RotoWire's website for 10 days, and then you could decide whether or not you want to actually, pay for the subscription. And if you're interested in the 10-day, I can't imagine why you wouldn't want to. But that's the deal. So use that right there, rotowire.com/prime SN, and enjoy your 10-day subscription. Okay, now let's get into this charter system. And we've already mentioned a few things, and we'll start at the top. For every NASCAR Cup Series race, there are 36 drivers who receive guaranteed spots. So we all know, well, maybe you don't know that. It's partly why we're here. But you know that they're going to be 40 in total, Eric, right? So you got 36 guaranteed because those are I guess the chartered spots?
Those are the chartered spots. So yeah,
And by the way, it can't go more than 36, or can it?
No, 36 is the max.
Okay, so there's no way you can get more than 36. Okay.
No, and here's the caveat too: if you have a charter, you have to run all 36 races. You have to, and the All-Star race. You have to.
And why wouldn't you? That's a cost thing.
It would cost your money and cost NASCAR could take it away.
I mean, so the reason why somebody wouldn't want to is because I just can't afford this. I've got myself way in over my head.
Yep, I can't afford it. Yeah. The ship's sinking, and I can't come to Texas. Prime example: Ryan Preece, JTG Jordy Racing. We'll go over that in a second. To explain that, he doesn't have a charter on the 37 car. The All-Star race, if you noticed, he didn't race in it. They don't have the money to just show up and run 50 laps and not go farther. I'm like, well, we just got nothing out of this. So, because they're not a charter, they did not have to show up to the All-Star race.
Okay.
So the 36 charters, the list that we'll go over, these cars are 100% guaranteed will be at every all 36 points paying race plus the All-Star.
And we're going over
this season.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
what the example we're starting off with, because there are 36 obviously, and these are the 36. By the way, is there any way, like, what would happen is it possible that you couldn't field, like, if you couldn't afford it, let's just say for whatever reason you weren't able to get 36? Is that possible? And then if you only had like 34, does that just mean now you have 6 open spots?
It would in theory, but it wouldn't happen because NASCAR would somebody would take those two. NASCAR can revoke it. I mean, they can revoke it anytime they want. And part of the rule is too, if you finish in the bottom 3 for I think it's 2 or 3 consecutive years among the charter teams, they could revoke it too, because they don't want somebody coming out here and
just driving around
like a Rick. Yeah. But somebody will always take it. You see the market. So there's always going to be the 36.
Okay.
Plus, the field is maxed at 40. So there's 4 open spots.
Yep.
Now, you'll notice in some races as of late, you'll see 38, 39 cars. It's not a full field. And that's because there's not enough open cars. There's not enough open teams. Now, in the event, because this could come up too, people may wonder, all right, so you got 36 cars. What happens this season? Majority of the races aren't qualifying. What happens if 41, 42 cars want to show up? Well, then they go by owner points over the open teams. So it pays for the open teams. You do want to show up because in the event, a big marquee race, and you've got, hey, we'd really like to run this race, but we've only ran 2 races all year, and some of these other open teams, they decided to show up. They're ahead of us in owner points. Well, we can't go to the race now because we're not going to make it. So if you've got the money as an open team, you can do it.
Okay.
Some of these teams that are threatening that expand, we'll just run open. Okay, I hear you. You could do that. But it's going to be hard for you to sell a lot of sponsors if that open list gets to 6, 7 cars. Because let's do it, face next year, practice and qualifying in a bigger extent's coming back. So now you may have qualifying is going to mean something because you're going to have cars probably going home again. Do you want to risk? What if you wreck? What if a big team like this, you wreck? And there's one more caveat you have to bring to this too. You're maxed out at 4. That's the most you can get. So like Hendrick Motorsports, as an example, have 4. Now, let's say somebody may ask, well, what if they want to run a car non-chartered? What if they just want to bring a 5th car out but not have a charter? That's not allowed because NASCAR would know if they could, they would. Hendrick could show up with 8 cars then, and Stuart Haas could show. So they're trying to make it fair for these teams if you want to get in, but the caveat is there's 36 total charters, and each organization is maxed out at 4. So as we go through this list, we'll go through and you'll see why some teams, that is who they are. That's who they got. They can't expand, and you'll see why most of the 4, which we'll get to, they're not going to downsize, but there could be some potential for another. So I'm sure we'll talk about that here in a second too.
Yes, let's go through the list. So as you see on the screen here, 36 team charters this season, and they're broken down, as most of you fans are aware, this way, where you have the 4 driver teams: Hendrick, Joe Gibbs, Stuart Haas. You got the 3 Penske and Rick Ware. And actually, you know what? I'm going to stop right there because Rick Ware. Okay, so you might have some average fans that might go, whoa, wait a second. Hendrick, Joe Gibbs, Stuart Haas, Penske, and Rick Ware.
Yeah.
What's Rick Ware doing with 3 charters? What is that about?
Here's the intriguing. He is the probably most intriguing case out of this whole thing. And him, and we'll get to Starcom in a minute, have the keys to this silly season. Rick Ware has accumulated 4 charters. Bravo to him.
And he's using just 3 of them right now this season.
Technically, he's got 4. The Petty Ware one. He
okay.
owns it. He teamed up. So he's technically has 4.
Petty Ware, they're partners.
They're partners.
Okay.
He bought Petty's. Because remember a few years ago, it was like Brian Scott and Sam Hornish Jr. were teamed with the 43 car. That number 44 with Penske. And Penske was like, or not Penske, Petty, I'm sorry. And Petty's like, I don't have the money to keep it going. Rick Ware bought it. He bought it from him and said, I'll just keep the Petty name tied to it, but it's mine. So he's got 4 charters. He's maxed out. So here's where he's the key. You got all these teams wanting in. And if you guys all are NASCAR fans, which you probably are for watching this, you'll know Rick Ware Racing. Like, do you mean the 4 cars that are always at the bottom of the field every race?
Yes.
Has 4 charters?
Yes.
Yes. So here's where Denny Hamlin, I think it was Hamlin, made a very interesting note about Rick Ware. So Rick Ware race. So let's be honest. Let's start at the top. Hendrick, Gibbs, Penske, Stewart-Haas. They have new cars almost every race. You always see them tinkering. Oh, we built a Nashville car. We built a Darlington car. They're running through cars all the time. They're spending way more money than they're making. They're spending millions upon millions to win up front. Rick Ware, his business plan is, I know Hendrick probably isn't going to use a 2018 car in this weekend's race. I'll buy your old fleet. I'll pay you 100, 200,000. I'll take those old. You're not even using them. So he's running older cars, which is part of the reason why they're running the back. He doesn't have the equipment. I'll run those spare parts. I'll run these junkyard stuff. Oh, and I'll take these people. How did Derek Hope run the Daytona 500? Because these drivers have money and they're bringing a paycheck to them to ride that car or drive that car. So if you look at what the big teams are spending and what they're doing to show up, and you look at what Rick Ware.
So you're saying a driver will go to Rick Ware and say, I'm going to write you guys out a check so I can drive in the race?
Correct.
Are they then bringing a sponsor with them to cover?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what's going on. So a sponsor may say, I got a Dasani water right here. Let's say they want to sponsor me. Let's say I had a little bit of a racing background. I'm like, I've got $300,000. Hey, we want you to run your home race. We're going to put you in the Brickyard or the road course race. All right. Hey, Rick Ware, they gave me $300,000. So I got $200,000. I'm going to keep $100,000. I'll give you $200,000 if I can drive that car. And knowing that car is pretty much already paid off.
Okay.
And he's going to be like, okay, come on in.
All right.
So at the end of the day, Rick Ware is making more money than these other teams. He's profiting. So like Hamlin saying, look, this guy is not even running up front. He's running old cars, pay-to-play drivers, and he's making more money than
no overhead.
Nope. So it's his business plan. It's his prerogative. He's got his right. But here's what Rick Ware just did, too. If you guys might notice, Romain Grosjean in the IndyCar series, he ran Pietro Fittipaldi at the Indy 500. He's got an IndyCar team. Why do you think that is? Because here's what Rick Ware is doing. Hey, Dasani Water, I know you're talking to Joe Gibbs Racing. Let me tell you what I can offer. A cup car. I got an Xfinity car. You want to sponsor on an Indy car? I can give you I can make sure your company colors and your name is in all these races. So that's his business plan.
Okay.
So
and I'm assuming the sponsorship is a lot cheaper though.
Absolutely, because he doesn't need as much. So he can take a discount. So he's kind of hurting the market per se. So it's kind of ticking some of these people off. It's like, whoa, how did we let this happen? How does this guy have it? So this is the year though. So let's come back to looking for 2022 and how these charters play out. Remember I said he's using old cars. 2018, 2017, and 2019. There's a new car coming out next year. Can Rick Ware afford to buy 4 charters to run next year? Because he's got to pay the millions that it's going to take like all these other
Probably not,
teams. No. So does Rick Ware sell
a
charter or 2 or 3 to help pay for more money to be maybe better resources for 1 or 2 cars? So these guys
we don't even know that yet.
We don't know. Right now, he's not saying they're for sale yet. So these teams are sitting there saying they can sell. I'll run an open car. They know they're waiting to see what Rick Ware can afford. They're waiting. If Rick Ware can afford all these cars and the new car and the sponsorship, then they might be in some trouble. Because as we go through this list, you're going to see who else is going to get rid of a charter to allow these new teams in.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's see. Let me pick up the pace here. So let's move ahead to the 2022 season because that's really the best way to give everyone the example of what we're dealing with here. So 31 of 36 spots are already taken, and we're going to break them down right here for you.
Yep.
So same thing, Hendrick, Joe Gibbs, Stewart-Haas, they're all back. Penske, they're back. The only one that isn't back, we just talked about, is Rick Ware. So, because we don't know yet if he's back.
Well, no. Yep.
So that missing there. Matter of fact, let me see if I can.
Right
let me move this chart here. Actually, give me this. This is a lot quicker. Let me move the chart here. Let's see the best place to put it. Well, no, it's just sped through. Go fast. Let me see. There we go. All right. So There's this year. Slow it down. All right. And now you start seeing this year's with last year's. Okay. So there you go. So you see now the 2, Chip Ganassi, front row, RCR, Roush. Those are the only ones that are back.
At the 2, yeah.
For the 2.
I don't
for the
see,
2 teams.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why. And remember, Roush, the Keselowski angle we'll talk about next show. There's the rumor that nobody's ever denied that, the writing's on the wall. It's going to happen. He's going to buy into Roush Fenway. Do they expand to 3? Do they keep Newman? What do they do? But right now they've got 2. They're not going to go backwards. Chip Ganassi's not going backwards. RCR is not going backwards. The Front Row Motorsports has 2. They're not going. They're going to keep those. So you could count those the next year. Like, why would they get rid of them?
Okay.
So now you go down
to
the single cars.
And then the only 2 that are not on the screen here, the one that's not on from this year is Spire.
Yep.
Okay, so as far as Spire is concerned, they are going to go from the reason they're not on the 2 list is because they are on the 1 list. Because
they actually would have been on the 3 list. They went from 3 to 1 is what they did. So
3 to 1. Okay.
Yeah. They had. There we are. The 7, the 77, and the 99. Those are the 3 charters they got. 99, they leased the Trackhouse Racing, which is the Pitbull Justin Marks team owned. Daniel Suarez drives. And the 7 and 77. 7 is Corey LaJoy. The 77 is that extra car you see that sometimes like Justin Haley rides in, Reed Sorensen, like that type of car. So Spire knows we probably can't afford 3 cars next year. And then Colleague came around and said, we want to run 2 cars next year. That's the Xfinity team. Spire sold 2 of their 3 charters to Colleague, which is why Colleague's a 2-car team next year. And Spire goes from 3 to 1. They'll keep the number 7 for Corey LaJoy, but their 77 and 99 go to Colleague, which in turn leaves Trackhouse Racing without a charter now, because for next year they could ride the rest of the year out when they got. But that's the risk you take by leasing, because you can only lease for a year. Spire could have sold it to Trackhouse, but Colleague probably came in with more money. So now Trackhouse does not have a charter at all, and they want to expand to 2 cars, and Colleague took 2 of the 3. So Spire, a lot of people wonder, well, who are they? They're actually a sports agency group. They represent some of these drivers. So it's in their best interest to have a charter, because what better way to attract a driver to you? Say, hey, we can also represent you in agency off the track, help with your contract. So I've got a charter. We own a charter. You can come race for our team until a stepping stone. And Spire's getting engines from Hendrick Motorsports too. So that's an interesting team that they knew they can't run 3. Let's take the money we sold for and put it back into the single car with Hendrick resources. So it'd be interesting to see what that 1 car can do next year, because they just got a lot of money for the 2 charters and they're aligned with Hendrick. So you instead of spreading yourselves thin, now you can really focus on 1 car, and I'll be interested to see what they can do.
All right, so then the 1-car teams, again, you got JTG, Live Fast, Richard Petty. We just mentioned Spires down to 1. Wood Brothers and 23. What is that? Is that XI? 23XI? What is it?
2311. Yeah, XI is 11. The Roman numeral.
What is 11 for? Yeah. Oh, Hamlin.
Denny Hamlin. Yep.
All right. And now I get it. All right. So, So the difference now is for the teams that you've already talked about, Trackhouse and Starcom. You talked about them?
Yep. That's what I mentioned earlier, that they're the only other one that holds those keys, because they're an underfunded team. And what do you do? But those others on that list, JTG runs 2 cars. But remember, like I said about Ryan Preece, they don't have a charter. You don't want to get rid of that 1 charter, because then you got 2 cars and no charter. Yep. So you probably want to hold on to that. We know Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan aren't going backwards. No. They want to expand, so they're not getting rid of that one. The Wood Brothers and Richard Petty, they're not getting rid of their charters. You can't have those guys without charters. LiftFast has already said they're not selling their charter. They're in. They've already mentioned last week, we're not for sale. We want to keep growing this thing. I know we can get some money that maybe put back in, but who's to say if we sell and put money and start running good that we can buy back in without paying more? And now we're going backwards again. So they're staying put. So that's why I say out of those teams, Starcom's the only one who's not said anything for next year.
Okay.
So that's
so that leaves 5 right now, 31 of 36 are in for
Pretty much
2022.
accounted for. Yep.
So we have 5 charters remaining, and here's the list. And we've kind of already talked about some of them. So again, GMS Racing. So they're going to be now, even though we have no idea about how they're going to move up. Is that just them saying that they're going to be a charter? Or, like you said before, we don't know. We don't know that when the contracts are, what they look like, or when they are even made. So is just this speculation, or is this definite 100% that GMS Racing will be one of those new 5, and it could be 2 of those last 5?
That they're 100% running. They're going to 100% race next year. We don't know. Right now they don't have a charter. They said they don't have one yet.
So they don't have one yet.
No, and they're even interesting. I wonder with them, as I went through and read their language and their announcing, and yeah, they could show up as GMS open team. Let's just figure it out. And if we don't make the race, we don't make the race. We'll eventually get our way in. Or they also mentioned they'd be interested in partnering with somebody. So does GMS maybe partner with Richard Petty Motorsports? Do they partner with?
Okay.
Do they just become a name on a car?
All right.
So yes, they want to be their own team, but they said they're interested in partnering too.
So it's possible that they might not even take up one of those last 5.
Yeah, it's possible they just show up as an open car, or they just partner with an existing team.
Okay.
That's still on the table too.
And then there's Rick Ware, as we talked about. They've got up to 4. Yep. They could also sell them. Let's see. Starcom, we talked about Starcom. No decision has been made yet on whether they're going to use it or lease it. And then there's Trackhouse. And they're the ones that who's driving the Trackhouse again?
Suarez.
So
here's where it gets interesting. So we got 5 right now. We could say 5 of them are open. They could all come back, and there may not be any open. But right now we know 5 that they could be bought. You've got Trackhouse, who now needs 2 charters.
Yes.
The 2311 team, they want another one. GMS, I know they'd be in the market for one. There's 4. JTG, they'd want another one. Well, there's 5 right there. And that doesn't count if there's any other new, like Junior Motorsports I put in there. There's been rumors. Not sure that's going to make it happen next year, but you got to count them because they've been talking. Does it happen? Probably not. But if it is, there's 6. But I just said there's 5 for the taking. Could be. So how does that work? Because let's say Junior just falls off. Let's just still say there's 5. There's 4 open spots. That's it. Those are 5 big teams. Those are 5 teams that don't want to go home. So if you show up with that, let's just say, hey, those 5, hey, we're going to run as open cars every week. Well, that's 41 cars for 40 spots. One of them's going home every race. Can they afford to go home? So, or does Rick Ware Starcom start giving up some charters for these teams? So that's where the internal fight between them is who, or Trackhouse. Say Trackhouse can get 1. Do they expand to 2 cars then? Do they just say, hey, I got 1 charter, I bought it. I don't know if I can expand to 2 because I paid $10 million just to get this charter. So that's where the silly season plays out, is how much money do these guys spend to get a charter or 2? And if they can only get 1, does that cost them from getting a second car back out because they spent all this money over here? Because like we talked about, how can Kurt Busch go, what if Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan's team spend so much money for a second charter they can't afford Kurt Busch? Or what if Trackhouse can only get 1 charter and they just can't expand to a second? Shouldn't Kurt Busch just stay with Ganassi another year then? So this charter deal is going to really be the top domino to see what else falls afterwards.
How many drivers would you say mathematically are bringing their own sponsorships to like, let's just, again, and I'm saying, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, these guys, are they just, hey, what are you paying me? Thank you. That's it. That's all I want. On average, how many of those drivers like that are just, I'm not dealing with sponsors. You're just going to pay me what I want to pay, what I want to make, and that's it. Versus drivers that are actually saying, well, all right, let's negotiate. I've got a sponsor or 2, that kind of thing.
I'd say probably half. I bet it's half and half. I would say that, and that's where the pendulum's swinging a little bit, like Keselowski was alluding to last year. So, like the Keselowskis, the Kurt Busch, the Ryan Newmans, these guys that have been racing for decades, that when they first got in the sport, a lot of it was, here's a blank check. How much do you want to make? We got all this money coming in. To it's came in to you got guys literally paying to take that seat. So the team can say, hey, I could sign you. I know you're worth $10 million a year. I got it right. I know you're worth. I know you've been making, but I need you to take a pay cut. I need you to take less because I got a guy that's going to pay to take your seat if you don't. And that's so these drivers have been. I mean, what job do you take that you exceed or excel in your job? And every so many years, your boss comes to you and says, "Hey, you've done a great job.
Yeah.
I need you to take a pay cut
Yeah.
because Johnny from accounts receivable wants to come take your job, and you know what? He's going to actually pay us to
Yeah.
take your job.
Yeah.
So, but we really like you, but I know you're worth a raise, but I actually need to take you to take a pay cut. So it keeps happening. Or if you don't want to take a pay cut, can you bring some sponsorship money to offset this? So a lot of these guys, I've got like Keselowski, you know, when he came in, it's like he's never had to bring sponsorship money because he went to Penske. They had Miller Lite.
Sure.
They had, and you got to look at the 90s and early 2000s. A lot of these cars had one sponsor. Jimmy Johnson, Lowe's, Tony Stewart, Home Depot, Gordon DuPont. I mean, you had the same sponsor all 36 races, maybe different paint schemes on it. Nowadays, how many cars do you see other than Denny Hamlin's that's the same sponsor every race? That tells you they have to bring other sponsors to make this work. So that's why I'd say probably half and half.
Okay.
I bet, like Kurt Busch, for example, he kept mentioning Monster Energy. So they're kind of probably paying his bill with Ganassi a lot. So Monster Energy could look at this situation and say, hey, I'd be interested in staying with you, Kurt Busch. You know, Michael Jordan, Pitbull, you know, they'd fit into our marketing strategy. But why would I spend the money to go to a team I'm not guaranteed of making the race when we could stay here together at Ganassi, knowing we're in all 36 races? You won a race other than this year. Every year we've been together with this deal. Wouldn't it be better to just let's stay together? Or does Kurt say, nah, I really like this opportunity over here. I guess I'll leave you. And now Monster's up for the taking. So there's a lot of factors at play with it. That's why this whole silly season game has changed so much because of charters and sponsors and drivers literally paying to take your seat now that it drives the market down, which I can't imagine being in that position. I really can't. I really can't somebody coming to us right now and saying, hey, you guys have done a great job on your show. I know you're due a raise. You both are due raises, but I've got two guys over here that are actually going to pay me like $500 to take your headphones off and put them in their ears.
Well,
so
it's actually being done. You know, they've been doing that like on TV and radio stations for years. You know, where they've got blocks of time to sell, and they sell it, and it could be a great show, and they got a great audience. But hey, you know, I don't care about traffic. That's not the station that we are here. We're about money, and traffic's nice, but money's more. And those guys are going to come in and take over. How much you guys paying me? Well, they can pay me double. So sorry.
It's a thing that I don't know if it'll ever turn back around because these business models and stuff has changed. And like I guarantee, we'll take William Byron for example, with a Hendrick car, came in young. I bet you he is making millions upon millions less than what Jeff Gordon was making that same 24 ride a couple decades ago. So these team owners now can look at it in the sense that, I got a good young driver, kind of like what NFL teams do now with quarterbacks. Draft them young, pay them a rookie salary, let them play their rookie contract out, and then contemplate whether, he might be damaged goods. I can go draft another one and surround pieces, pay money elsewhere. And I think that's what's happened in the NASCAR now. So it's frustrating for these veterans so for the Keselowski angle, and some people may ask, why would you leave Penske? Why would you leave that to go to Roush Fenway, who hasn't won since 2018 or 17? What are you doing? And his response could be job security. I can get a raise. I've got my own team. I've won a championship. So that's That's why this market has completely changed. Why we have to do the show explaining this before we can explain driver movement,
Yeah.
because you can't have driver movement without this.
Yeah, and that's what we're gonna do on our next show. So, and that's more of that. That's when we can have a little bit more fun, and then we can
Yep.
go over exactly which drivers are already locked in, and
Yep.
when we go over that, do we know for sure that when we talk about the drivers that are definitely either coming back or going here, especially the ones that are returning to their teams?
Yeah.
Are we like 100% sure that will we that we know that, or again, is it one of those things where, well, that's what's being said, but we won't know officially until a certain time?
Most of the time, yeah, we could probably. I would say nothing's 100%, because what I found out in racing contracts is we see these. He signed a 2-year deal. He signed a 3-year deal. You think, oh, okay, he's good till 2023. Let me jot that down. But come to find out, a lot of it's year to year.
So they're not
Like
guaranteed.
they're not guaranteed.
Yeah.
So you don't fully know. But you have, like, let's be honest, Hendrick's not getting rid of any of his Ford drivers. Yeah. Why would he?
Sure.
Joe Gibbs Racing's not getting rid of Denny Hamlin. Truex just signed. Kyle Busch isn't going anywhere. They just brought Chris through. So we could do a process of elimination to know. So we'll know. But yeah, like the Benedetto last year, he was asked that, and he kind of divulged, which helped us gain knowledge of what goes on, because he kept saying he needed to know, per the language in his deal, by I think it was September 30th or October something of last year, whether he'd be back with the Wood brothers. And we were asking, hey, like, you signed a multi-year deal, and this is year one. What do you mean you got to have a deadline to know whether you're back or not? And he said, no, well, yes, it's a 3-year contract, but the team has the option at this date of this year every time.
Oh, we just lost them. See, we shouldn't have went over that extra. You're back, Eric?
Sorry, my wife called me right in the middle of the show. The team has an option to sign you for the next season. So, yeah, you have a contract, but that doesn't mean they're going to bring you back. So it's hard to know who's got that in their contract.
Well, again, if you're a football fan, and especially the NFL, and a NASCAR fan, you are a lot more understanding of the process.
Yep.
Because again, the whole guaranteed, that's all people care about now. When it used to be, okay, same thing in the NFL. Here you were signed for 5 years. Oh, all right, he's going to be around for 5 years, but we all know better now. Now they could say 5 years, but all right, I got to go find out what the contract looks like, so I know when are the guaranteed years. When will his dead money be too high for the team, and they're going to have to either trade him or renegotiate his contract. And so
same thing.
A 5-year deal could be a 2-year deal. So yeah,
everybody's got opt-outs. It's like an opt-out. Most of the time in racing, the team holds the opt-out clause. Do we want you back or do we not? So that's the reason with most NASCAR drivers have that in there. And the other reason is, used to be NASCAR drivers, you would think, hey, I want to sign a 5-7 year deal. I got job stability.
Sure.
But a lot of them like to sign short deals and bet on themselves, knowing, hey, if I run 2 years and I'm winning, my contract's bigger. Or I can negotiate with other teams.
Yep.
So there's that language in there too. Like IndyCar side, I talked to Colton Herta in May. He signed with Andretti Autosport. He just won a few weeks before that. He's 21 years old, and we asked him, why did you sign already? It's not like you're not going to go unsigned next year. Penske's going to, everybody would be after you. Why would you not want to test the open market?
Yeah.
And he said, for the language in my deal, I can't tell you the date, but there was a date that we haven't hit yet that said in my contract I couldn't even talk to other teams. So I want the security. I felt this team's giving a championship level car now. I'm already winning races. I want to owe it back. I want to show them, if you pay me well, I'm going to show you my loyalty back, and I won't even test the market.
Okay.
I won't even see what's out there.
Yeah.
It works. So he's like, so it worked both sides. Could I maybe have tested the open market and Roger Penske paid me a lot more? Maybe, but I don't know that.
Sure.
So why not just keep the distraction aside? But that also tells me there's language in these things by like, hey, by July 24th, we need to know whether I'm back or not.
Yeah.
So
and we don't know.
We don't
know
that.
anything about those clauses in those contracts.
Which is weird. I always thought with racing, if you want to know a NBA, NFL, MLB, any contract, you can just Google
go find it. Yeah.
It's not NASCAR. We don't know what these guys make. We don't know how long they're. We know what it says. They signed a 2-year extension, but we don't know how much, and we don't know if that 2-year extension was just literally year by year. So it's a.
I mean, I guess though
sport.
it is an individualistic type of sport, even though we know it's a team sport. We do, but the individual is the one that drives the team so much that you can look. I don't know. And I guess that is different because in golf or tennis, they don't have contracts. They just make whatever they make, depending on how good they are. So it's a standalone. Nothing is like it.
No,
so,
it'd be fun if it was out there, but it also kind of adds the intrigue that you don't know. I see it too. Plus, I think in the past it would be nice. We know those guys are making multi-millions in the past, and now I also think I could see why it's not out there because they'd be like, that guy only makes what? Like, there's an IndyCar driver, I won't mention his name. He ran the Indy 500. He's been running the Indy 500 for the last several years. He's been a part-time driver, some full-time opportunities. I was talking to him about the 500 after the race and about the experience and everything, and he told me he didn't make $1. He risked his life for 200 laps in a race and all month, and the team didn't give him a paycheck. Because that was part of the only way he got a paycheck is if you finished in the top 4 that day.
Okay.
You don't finish in the top. He paid the team $250,000 to race that car from a sponsor, and he did not make a single dollar. Can you imagine going out for your job?
I better have a lot of money.
Yeah, and say you're going to go race for 3 hours at speeds at 230 miles an hour, pulling the G-forces of an astronaut going up into space. And I'm not paying you.
Yeah.
Unless you finish in the top. So there's that options out there. There's some guys that literally drive for free.
But I mean, it happens, and it's just some of it you can understand. It is, even though it sounds risky, at least they do control in a way a lot of it. Now, sometimes you can't if you don't have a really good team to help you, because your team could be pulling you down, sort of like what we talked the other day, like when we were slamming Ryan Blaney's team.
Yep.
And then, sure enough, last week, before the race even starts, he's starting in the back.
Yep.
So that's the circumstance that is not that's out of the driver's control. But look, I wonder, have you ever spoken to someone about that? Is there any particular reason why you wouldn't disclose your contract?
Yeah, because they said that if you do, because it leaves everybody wondering, if you do, then you ruin the chance of maybe getting what you want on the next one from somebody else. Let them think you might be making one thing. Like some drivers have said, like, hey, I made $100,000 to race for a season. I love $1 million, but that team doesn't know. Maybe I go and, hey, I want.
So it's like the real world.
Yeah, you're just it is really like
nobody knows.
Weird. Nobody knows, and the insurance factor, you got to think of insurance.
Oh yeah, you better have insurance if you don't.
Oh, you can imagine how much it probably is for these guys.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
But the other factor, so these guys, they might have money. They might have. Let's use Ryan Preece as an example, or Ross Chastain a few years ago. I'll use Chastain. He had sponsorship to run a full season in Xfinity for a mid-level team. He'd run every race. He'd probably be an afterthought. Hopefully somebody notices me. Or that same amount of money will get me 3 races with Chip Ganassi Racing in the Xfinity Series. But knowing I'm not a full-time driver, I could take the money here, but what happens if I wreck? What happens if the car has an issue? What happens if my finishes aren't there? I just spent all my money here, and why would anybody sign me? If I can't produce in that car, what car can I produce in?
Yeah.
So you have that factor. it paid off for him because hence he's a Ganassi driver in the Cup Series right now. So you got some guys that are like, why would I take all my money to an underfunded team when I could run for this team for less and show myself?
Yeah, well.
So you got that aspect. That's what hurts the value for like a Keselowski. If somebody's out there, it's like, I've got enough money to afford this Penske car. I'd rather pay money to go there and take less of a salary, knowing it could pay off for me in the long run, than go take this money and make more money and get less of a chance because it didn't pan out.
Sure.
Or I'm an afterthought. So that's where the pay to play scenario comes in too. So it's because there's a lot of guys out there that might pay to play that's the only option they've got, and they've got talent. Jeff Gordon wanted to be an IndyCar driver. All the IndyCar team owners in the 90s said how much money he got. They didn't even look at his talent. Rick Hendrick and down south, they were like, we'll take you. You don't need to bring anything but a steering wheel and a helmet. And look what happened to him.
Yeah.
Imagine if he went to an IndyCar, we would be having a completely different story. So that's how these things change as years go on.
Well, and this is a situation that will be at least locked in till 2024.
2024. Yep.
2024. All right. So this is part one. Part two, again, is silly season talk. So that's going to be coming up on our next report. And that should be a lot of fun. So we're going to try and fill in the blanks for each team for 2022. And same thing here. We'll have a list of the guaranteed kind of locked in drivers and teams and so forth. And then we'll show you the list of who is still up in the air and what the possibilities are. So can't wait to do that. Eric, how's everything going on at racereviewonline.net?
Good. Busy. Slowing down a little bit because there's one series, I should say, this year instead of IndyCar and NASCAR. We just got NASCAR this weekend. And then
when does IndyCar pick up?
The next weekend, they're at Mid-Ohio. And then they got that month off, that month lull.
Oh, so one more race before the Olympics.
Yes.
Okay. And NASCAR has the Road American next week. Yeah, we were talking. I hope they fix their bandwidth issues at the racetrack.
Yeah, they'll need that in that media center there.
Are they? Is it just Cup?
I think Xfinity too. I think it's both. I think it's. In fact, I know Xfinity Saturday and then the Cup Sunday.
Okay.
So,
well, they better fix their bandwidth issues so we can provide you with press conferences after the race.
Or it's going back to like the 80s from what? Yeah.
I don't know what that was about, but anyway. All right. So we'll talk to you in the next report, Eric. And then when these reports are over, we will talk IndyCar next week.
Yep. Absolutely.